Hey everybody, let's try this one more time, shall we? I'm here with the first edition of the Cartoon Flashback for 2014. Just a side note, I've been attempting to do this review pretty much for a couple of times, trying to keep it within one video instead of two parts, because I know some people are not fans of multiple videos, especially long ones. But anyway, I'm here to talk about Swat Kats, the Radical Squadron. Now this was created by the Twombly brothers back in the 90s. It was animated and released by Hanna-Barbera Productions and Turner Programming Services. And it ran for 2 seasons. Now, just like Disney had gargoyles, if you will, be the answer, according to people like Doug Walker, the nostalgia critic, be the answer to Batman the Animated Series, the same could be said for Swat Kats, the Radical Squadron. People can make that argument to say that they were kind of the same answer for Hanna-Barbera to the Batman animated series. And in a sense, maybe an answer to the X-Men animated series. Because you see, at this time, Swat Kats, like several shows like Sonic Sat AM, in a sense, Biker Mice from Mars, and even some of the non-anamorphic shows like Batman the Animated Series and X-Men. And even the shows that preceded it and came after, like Pirates of Dark Water and The Real Adventures of Johnny Quest. This was at a period of time in television animation where a lot of shows started to adapting more darker, grittier, edgier, action-adventure-based, dramatic style, dramatic storytelling style. Let me repeat. A more dark, edgy, gritty, action-adventure-based, dramatic storytelling style. Or basically dramatic style, period. But a lot of television shows, animated shows on Saturday mornings and on weekday afternoons started to adapt that kind of a style into the programming, into the shows. They really did. And this went for a few years. I think it kind of came to an end back around 96, 97 when the EI was really being pushed for a lot of shows to have. The EI rate to go with the television rating. But anyway, the Swat Kats, of course, was one of those shows that adapted that dark, gritty, edgy, action-adventure, dramatic style into the show. And it really showed. And it really did. Now, of course, like some dramatic shows, you did have a bit of comic relief in there. You did have your humor. You had your characters that were the comic relief. And it all really blended together very well for 2 years, for 2 seasons. Unfortunately, the series was canceled. Many cite the reason for the cancellation due to the fact of the show's violence, due to the fact that it didn't have the viewership or the ratings that they were hoping for, or it didn't sell the merchandise they were hoping it would sell, while others cite that it was Ted Turner himself that said, it was Ted Turner himself that said, nope, we're not going to have that kind of a show. I want a show that's more EI related. Here's a guy that okayed Pirates of Dark Water. The year that came out a year or two before, and yet he's saying no to this. Here's a guy that, in a sense, okayed Galatar. He came out in the mid-'80s, and he's saying no to this. The only reason is because of sponsorship, and he didn't sponsorship and the almighty dollar, if you know what I mean. But anyway, Swat Kats, despite that, ran for 2 seasons and was very popular among fans even to this day. Even to this day, it's been very popular among fans. Now, what made Swat Kats so different? What made it a unique show for people to want to watch and enjoy? Well, of course, everything that I mentioned. Its style, its overall style, that dark, gritty, edginess, action-adventure, dramatic style. It had all of that. And the characters themselves really helped out. Each character, villain or hero, had a personality that differentiated them from each other. Let's take a look at the heroes, the good guys, if you will. Of course, you have the SWAT Kats. Now, long story short, the reason the SWAT Kats came to be in the cartoon, in the storyline in the cartoon, was because both of them, by the names of Jake Clausen and Chance Furlong, used to be part of the military-like police force known as the Enforcers. But due to a misunderstanding with the Commander Farrell, who also plays a major part in the show, they were dismissed from the Enforcers. Why? Because one, they didn't follow his orders to back away from the antagonists who they were going after and were close to capturing, and because of the fact that, well, Chance kind of mouthed off to Farrell. So what happens? Farrell says, hey, because you crashed your plane into Enforcer headquarters, guess what you're going to do? You're going to repay your debt to the society, and you're going to help repay to rebuild. You're going to help to rebuild Enforcer headquarters. So what does he do? He assigns them to a junk pile, to a junkyard, where a lot of Enforcer parts and stuff are dropped off by two other characters that are minor characters, but are kind of like the bullies they try to be like bullies to Chance and Jake, and in a sense, they try to be like the bullies to them. Anyway, long story short, Jake looks at this as an opportunity for them to continue being crime fighters, continue going after the villains and criminals of the city, but by doing it under a new identity, under a new look, because living in this junk pile, that actually gives them an advantage, because a lot of the things that are dumped off are spare parts or spare or damaged Enforcer parts from some of the vehicles, like tanks and jet planes and all that. So basically, Jake and Chance use that to kind of build their own arsenal of weapons and vehicles, and thus they become the SWAT Kats, with Jake taking on the persona or the alter ego of Razor, and Chance taking on the alter ego and persona of T-Bone. Now, of course, you can't have, a vigilante team like this, if you will, without giving them some kind of an ally to depend on. Someone that's like an outside source to them. So, enter in Deputy Mayor Callie Briggs, who's basically the April O'Neil of the group. I guess you could say she's like the April O'Neil of the group. She's basically the outside source. Why? Because she has because they gave her a communicator saying, hey, you ever need us, or you ever want to talk to us, here you go. And what's funny and ironic about this is Callie Briggs is actually friends with Jake and Chance, with Razor and T-Bone's alter egos, their real personas, the non-hero personas of Jake and Chance. But what's ironic is she's more attracted to Jake than she is Chance. Excuse me. And what's even more ironic about that is she's attracted to Razor, who is basically Jake's alter ego. And how is this more confirmed? It's more confirmed because later on in the first season, in the episode called Bride of the Pastmaster, the SWAT Kats go back in time to prevent the Pastmaster from marrying Callie Briggs' an ancestor in the medieval ancestor, who is a queen of the ancestral city of Megacat City. And what's funny about this, though, is the ancestor of Callie Briggs, the medieval ancestor of Callie Briggs, what's funny about this, after looking at some pictures and some clips, she wears lipstick, Callie doesn't. Go figure. But, I guess that's because her ancestor was a queen, right? Anyway. But the queen takes a liking to Razor just like Callie does. Coincidence? I think not. Now, of course, they do have an unlikely rival, if you will, in Commander Farrell. Now, Farrell doesn't know who these guys are. He's not in favor of the vigilante styles, of them interfering in what he considers enforcer business. but he is one of those unlikely allies. Basically, he's kind of like a shadow kind of like character, not power-wise or anything, but just persona-wise. Like, I don't really need to team up with you because I really don't like you. Or he's kind of like what Knuckles used to be. He's kind of like what Knuckles used to be when he first appeared. More like a loner. More like he doesn't. Well, basically what Farrell is he's basically a straight out of the book kind of guy. He's basically like straight from the book. Basically a straight book kind of follow the rules kind of guy. So that makes him basically a friendly nemesis, rival, ally for the SWAT Kats to work with when they have to. Again, when they have to. Now, they also have another female ally who's kind of like them in a way, kind of rebellious, if not a bit of a vigilante. Now, she doesn't wear a mask. She is an enforcer. She doesn't wear a mask, but she has a rebellious, almost vigilante-like attitude, and that's Commander Farrell's niece, Felina Farrell. And she gets introduced in the second season, and we notice right off the bat that she has a bit of an attraction towards T-Bone, Chance, if you will, and that kind of balances things out, if you will. It's kind of like both guys get somebody in the end. Both guys get somebody. And you can basically see during the second season, it's kind of evident that T-Bone Chance kind of has a similar attraction towards Felina as she does him. But this girl is actually very popular among fans, just like Callie is. If not, maybe a little more so. Not saying she is or not. Heck, she gets her own fan vid, for goodness sakes. But I think she's popular, probably on the same level of popularity as Callie because of the fact that she's badass. She's basically a kick-ass kind of girl. And like I said, she's rebellious, kind of has that rebellious, vigilante-like attitude. Kind of cool. And of course they have other allies as well. They have Dr. Simeon, who's like an archaeologist. Can't talk. Archaeologist-like person who goes around the world to all these dig sites and tries to bring back artifacts in the past and all that. And she's always sometimes a main player when it comes to the villain known as the Past Master, when the villainous Past Master shows up, and I'll talk about him in a minute. But she's always kind of like a bit player, not a bit player, but she's kind of like a co-character, kind of like a co-main character when it comes to Dark Cat being around. I mean, not Dark Cat, but when Past Master gets involved, I should say. When Past Master gets involved, she's kind of like that character that is needed in these is showcased in these situations because of that, her being an archaeologist and looking up and bringing back a lot of the artificial stuff that she does. Of course, you have other, like I say, you have other allied characters like Dr. Conway, who comes in the second season, Professor Hackle, who tries his best to build machines and robots to help humanity, or to help humanity, or basically catamanity, if you will, catamanity. So he does that, and he's responsible for us having two other villains, antagonists in the show as well. And of course you have Ann Gore, who's a reporter that will do anything she has to get a story, or go anywhere to get a story. Kind of like April, kind of like the 1980s, mid-1980s. I mean, kind of like the late 80s, mid-90s April from the cartoon. Kind of doing whatever it takes to get her a story. So, yeah, she's that kind of a character, and she does get involved in several episodes as well. And then, of course, like I said, you can have a good show like this, good guys and allies and heroes like this, without giving them some giving them some antagonists, some villains to fight. Now, the main villain that I was talking about earlier, the main antagonist that the SWAT Kats were trying to get when they used to be enforcers. His name is Dark Cat, and he's kind of like the kingpin, the mastermind. He's like the main villain, the main bad guy of the show. Even though he doesn't show up that much, he's still, I guess, focused on as like the main mastermind, the main bad guy. In fact, he's the one. In fact, he's responsible for bringing all the main villains, all himself and the other three main villains of the series together in the season 1 finale called named Catastrophe. You know, he's responsible for bringing them all together to try to take down the Swat Kats and take over the city. So he's a pretty badass bad guy himself in a sense. And then of course you have Dr. Viper. Now this guy does get an origin story, but it doesn't get told until the 2nd season. Why, I don't know. But he used to work at Mega Cat Labs, and him and his partner, long story short, created this thing called Viper Mutagen. And he tries to steal it one night. His partner catches him, and what happens is the mutagen spills all over him and seemingly kills him. But then his partner finds out that it didn't kill him, and it's in fact just going to mutate him into who he is, and that's Dr. Viper. And by doing this, Dr. Viper now has this goal to turn Mega Cat City into Mutation City or Mega Swamp City by not only flooding the city, if you will, like a swamp, but also by also mutating all sorts of things like animals, bugs, and even the Mega Cat City populace, mutating them into monsters and creatures and stuff like that. And then of course you have the Metallic Cats, who I thought were very entertaining as bad guys. They were kind of like the Bonnie and Clyde, just with the badass attitudes turned up a bit. And the comedic relief turned up a bit as well. They were kind of, you can see that they were kind of modeled off a bit of Bonnie and Clyde. Now they do get an origin story actually in the 1st season in the introductory episode. We find out that they used to lead a mob, used to be like leaders of a mob or a gang in Mega Cat City, and that they were imprisoned in Mega Cat City's equivalent of Alcatraz. And mainly what happened is their escape boat that they escaped in runs afoot with a cruise boat or something like that, crushes their boat, causes them to drown, basically causes them to drown into the river or into the ocean, and eventually wash ashore right next to Professor Hackle's lab. And because of them drowning in the ocean, their bodies are damaged beyond saving, beyond repair, but not their brains, not their brain patterns, not their brain waves. So he scans the brain waves and downloads them into these new Metallic Cat bodies. And instead of showing gratitude for what he did, they just go back to the old ways and embrace this new power that they have. And the advantage they find out as well is that even if their physical bodies get damaged, they can detach their heads and connect to any other machinery if need be. And that's a unique thing. Another thing I liked about the Metallic Cats, and I liked what Hanna-Barbera did with them in the show, was they had them find out the true identities of the Swat Kats. And I always thought that was something that they should have taken advantage of and really made the Metallic Cats a threat to the Swat Kats. You know, kind of made them more of a thorn in the Swat Cat's side than maybe even Dark Cat, because it's like, okay, let's say the Swat Cats defeat them, and instead of getting ready to turn them in or shut them down, you could have Mac or Molly, that was their names, one of them say, hey, if you stop us, if you try to capture us and take us back to Hackle, we'll let the world know who you guys are. We'll find a way to let the world know and let Feral know who you guys really are. And I always thought that, and I thought that would have been a great advantage, really make him a thorn. A bit of a bigger thorn, like I said, than Dark Cat was. But unfortunately, they didn't follow through on that. They didn't follow through on that, and that's a shame. And then, of course, you had other villains as well that appeared throughout the series. You had a female villain named Turmoil, who was kind of cool in a sense. You had a character that embraced a psychotic, evil, jester-like spirit, whose goal was to capture the king, queen, knight, and jester of Mega Cat City, or basically the equivalent of a king, queen, and knight and jester of Mega Cat City. That was his goal. And then, of course, you had other characters like Hard Drive, and stuff. So it was, you had a vast variety of villainous characters for them to fight. You had Rex Shard, you had Dr. Harley Street, just a vast variety of villains. And what was unique about this was each of these villains, just like what was unique about this, and I mentioned this earlier, these heroes and villains all had their own unique personalities that differentiated them from each other, and the way the character designs help that as well. Really help that out as well. I mean, speaking of character designs, a lot of people look at the character designs, especially between the male characters and the female characters, and they're like, wow, what a difference in animation style. Because here's why. Very few female characters in the show look like actual anamorphic cats. While the majority of the rest of the female characters, like Turmoil, the villainous Turmoil, like Felina Farrell, like Callie Briggs at times, and a few others. They all look like anamorphic cats, but with human facial features. They have like human facial features on them, but they're cats. You can tell they're cats, but they have human facial features. Well, the male the male characters like Chance and Jake and Farrell and Mayor Max, they all look like anamorphic cats. They look like actual cats. Well, the females, they're cats, but they have those human facial features on them, which make them kind of look like cat girls in a sense, if you want to use that term from anime. And speaking of anime, the style in the second season kind of, at times, with the action sequences and the facial expressions and emotions by the characters, all kind of resembled an anime-like influence, especially in the second season. And the animation style overall for the show was pretty cool. Now, you see at this time, a lot of shows, because they were doing that, they were embracing that dark, edgy, gritty, adventure-based dramatic style, all kind of opted for what many people consider the comic book-like art style for the show. In other words, backgrounds and stuff, and even backgrounds and stuff, and characters, and sometimes characters, if not the vehicles and stuff, all resembled something that you would see out of a comic book, almost like it was a comic book come to life. Very similar, in a sense, to what you saw with X-Men. Very similar to what you saw with the Red Sky seasons of Ninja Turtles. You saw all that. And I thought that was pretty cool. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. But the truth is, folks, Swat Kats definitely is one of the best shows Hanna-Barbera has ever done, and I wish it would have continued. Now, it did, like I said, it did run for about 26 episodes, the 26th one being a compilation series finale, while the others were 25 official new episodes. New episodes that you can watch and enjoy. Now, of course, there were 6 episodes that were never made. 3 that were in various stages of production, and 3 that were basically in concept stages. Now, the ones that were in production were, various stages of production were, The Curse of Cataluna, and according to Lance Falk, this is all according to Lance Falk, Cataluna is a new villainess who is a succumbus, and Commander Farrell falls in love with her, but unknown to Commander Farrell, she's using him to drain his life force out of him, to the point that when Felina and the SWAT Kats show up to save him, he basically almost has literally 1 foot into death's door, and he's basically and the stage that he's at is basically mummy state, almost. It's almost mummy state. You also had, let's see, you had Turmoil 2, The Revenge, which would have featured the return of Turmoil, and she would have had help from some of the women she liberated out of the women's jail to get a laser device to place on top of a fortress. And you would have had Doctors, and the other episode would have been Doctors of Doom, which would have seen the return of Dr. Harley Street teaming up with Dr. Viper to create havoc all over Mega Cat City and unleash an army of mutation plants and bugs and all that. Then of course you have the episodes that were not made, that were only in early concept. One of the episodes, according to Lance Falk, again, was Cold War, and it would have featured the return of Rex Shard. Rex Shard would have returned as a weather manipulating mutant warrior wanting to freeze and destroy Mega Cat City. You would have had an episode called Blackout, which introduced a new villain character named Blackout, who would have basically been responsible for the power outage of Mega Cat City, and at the same time threatened to destroy Mega Cat City. And then the last one would have been the Vampire She-Cat. The Vampire She-Cat. Now the Vampire She-Cat is, again, sort of a Dr. Viper episode, another episode with Dr. Viper, well, would have been another episode with Dr. Viper, but would have been more focused on Felina Farrell. Why? Because again, according to Lance Falk, one of Viper's mutations backfires and Felina gets doused with this mutation and she turns into a Vampire She-Cat. And basically, despite Viper's intentions, she starts to rebel against everybody. And only till the Swat Kats and Dr. Conway get her back to normal. So that would have been a unique kind of episode to watch. But anyway, those are the 6 episodes, the first 3 that I mentioned that were in various stages of production, and then these last 3 that were in various stages of concept, if not on the verge of production. And these, I think, these 6 episodes, I think, were meant to go probably into the third, were going to probably be meant for a 3rd season. Overall, Swat Kats definitely left an impact on a lot of us as animation fans who love this kind of a style and really wish for it to come back. I mean, I'm actually going to be doing a video where I talk about what I would like to see with a possible Swat Kat relaunch or reboot of any kind down the line if they ever decide to do one. So, but that's just my opinion. That's just basically my opinion on that. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this first edition of the Cartoon Flashback of 2014, if you will. I hope you guys enjoyed this first edition of the Cartoon Flashback for 2014. Comment down below, let me know what you guys think about it. Share your own memories or your thoughts on Swat Kats. And I'll talk to you all later. And hey, look, we made it through one video. Go figure. We didn't have to go into 2 parts. So, take care everybody, God bless, and comments are welcome, and peace out.